Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea from Game Informer. This is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. This week is a little bit of a strange one. I mentioned one of the games we'll be talking about later on in the show last week, and we also have some Pokémon Day news to cover, but first up, I want to address some of the stuff that has been going on with Game Informer in this past week. So starting off this show, you'll be stuck with just me. And then as we go on to the other segments, I'll be joined by this week's guest, Kyle Hilliard. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about what has been going on with Game Informer. So the reason I started this podcast, All Things Nintendo, has always been to talk about my love for the stuff that Nintendo puts out. But more than that, I want to talk about what's on my mind. And I owe it to you, the listener, to be 100% real with you. So I've never really made it secret my thoughts on the state of this industry and the way mass layoffs are just wreaking havoc on the developers and the studios that we love. I've told you that I think they're short-sighted. I've told you that I think a lot of the times the messaging will tell you, oh, this was our last-ditch effort, but that often doesn't include cuts for the executives responsible for the companies being in the places that they are where they need to feel like they lay off workers. I've also talked about how outside of the direct impact of people losing their salaries, their health insurance access, and even potentially work visas, outside of all that, the people who remain at the company are almost always required to pick up the slack with a ton more anxiety and no additional compensation. I mean, that's out of the question. It's never, we have fewer people, so we're not going to do as much. The expectations from the higher ups are almost always the same. And that's something that I think that so many people in this industry are dealing with right now. We've seen just thousands upon thousands of layoffs in the past, 9 months? And just recently, EA, Microsoft, Sony, Activision Blizzard, so many of these companies have been hit with layoffs. And it's undeniably terrible that the people who are laid off no longer have jobs. They no longer have their livelihood. They no longer have what was probably for them at one point a dream job. But at the same time, those who remain are going through it as well. The anxiety that they may be next, the increased workload, the morale dip that happens. I can speak on that from experience because prior to this week, I've survived 2 rounds of layoffs in the last 5 years. First one came in 2019, and the second one, I believe, came, time is just, ever since COVID, it's 2022, I think, is when that happened. Unfortunately, that number jumped to 3 this week. Blake Hester, who you have heard on this show a few times, as of this week, is no longer with Game Informer. This was not a decision that we made as Game Informer. This was a decision that we were told. And I want to be clear. Blake is an unbelievable writer and has done some of the most thoughtful work Game Informer has featured in the past several years. It sucks. It really sucks. And if you have something that you think he would be a good fit for, I don't know how many industry-focused people listen to this podcast. I know a few do. If you have something that you think he would be a good fit for, please 100% reach out to him on Twitter or LinkedIn. His Twitter is Metallica is Rad. LinkedIn, he's just Blake Hester. And then he also has a website, blakehester.rocks. Please reach out to him if you have anything that his expertise and his skills would be a fit for. Like I said, he's done some of the most thoughtful features. He coordinated our freelance efforts at Game Informer. Please send him your well wishes, if nothing else, but ideally send him invitations to discuss opportunities for his career because he deserves it. So that sends shockwaves through this team. As I mentioned, in 2019, we got our first round of layoffs since I've joined, but we've had 3 rounds of them since. Our team of 17 editors when I joined in 2015 is now down to 6 full-time editors and 1 part-time editor. We have an amazing team. Every single member on our staff is a freaking rock star. But we've been operating with this small team, continuing to put out 2 weekly podcasts, running a daily website, keeping active Twitch and YouTube channels, and of course, putting out an 84-page magazine every 5 weeks. And I know this is going to sound like I'm looking for sympathy here, but I promise you, I'm really just trying to level with everyone listening. Something has got to give. I'm a proponent of mental health initiatives and taking care of your mental health as much as you would your physical health. And when I look at how I've been personally over the last several months, I can't recall the last time I worked just 40 hours. I've continued putting out episodes of this podcast every single week. And quite frankly, I love doing it. But there have been some weeks where I didn't know how I would possibly pull it off with all the work I had on my plate. But I've made it work. But in the name of mental health, in lieu or in the wake of this change going on, and in the name of not forcing myself to overwork because we are so egregiously understaffed, I need to acknowledge that something has to give. And when I look at all the work that I need to do for my job, the one thing that I feel like I have control over is this podcast. This podcast has been one of the most exciting and enjoyable things that I've had the opportunity to do while at Game Informer. And it's even become such that I'll go to events and people will come up to me and the first thing they'll say is that they love this podcast. And hearing from the people who listen to this podcast and hearing how much they enjoy it and appreciate it, getting emails from all of you, it has been an incredible thrill. The kind words, the messages, the conversations I've had with people that listen to this podcast, that's precisely why I'm not getting rid of the podcast. That was my first thought when this came through, is like, in order to pick up the slack, I need to get rid of this podcast. So that is precisely why I'm keeping it running. I still love doing it. And I'm going to keep doing it because I enjoy it and it seems like people really appreciate it. But I'm going to keep doing it in a different kind of way. So All Things Nintendo is not going away, but I'm looking into ways that I can make it more sustainable and honestly, in some ways, even better. So I'm not going to be able to announce anything quite yet. I have some irons in the fire. I'm looking forward to talking more about it, hopefully next week. This has always been a podcast based on, me being straightforward with you and leveling with you and telling you what's on my mind and trying to be my authentic Nintendo-loving, nerdy self. And I don't want to stop that now. So hopefully I'll have an announcement on next week's show. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate all the kind words that all of you have sent to me. It is the reason that this show is going to continue, even as my day-to-day working continues to become busier and busier. But there are ways that I've charted it out that this is going to continue and it's going to be more sustainable and hopefully, like I said, even better for you, the listener. So I hope you will keep on listening because, again, it means so much to me. And I hope to have more news for you in the near future. But like I said, the plan is not for the show to go away, but I wanted to level with you while also addressing what you may have seen on social media over the last week with us, unfortunately, losing a member of our team that we care very much about and we think very highly of. So thank you so much for hearing me out on this. We're going to take a quick break, cleanse our palates with some music. And when we get back, hopefully have a much more upbeat segment and be joined by Kyle Hilliard to catch up on all the news from this past week. We will be right back. This week was not the biggest news week, but we did have our Pokemon Presents on Pokemon Day. But we're going to start with some news that didn't have anything to do with Pokemon Day. And joining me now for this is Kyle Hilliard. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing all right, I guess.
Yes. We touched on it the last segment. It's we're doing our best. That's what we can do.
Keep it rolling.
Yeah. So Kyle, I know that you and we are so excited to talk about Switch 2 rumors. We're so excited to. I thought I was done.
You did not tell me that this was part of me being on today.
I was so excited to be done talking about both the Xbox multi-platform rumors and Switch 2 rumors. And, I'm perusing the various Nintendo websites that I check out for news on this podcast. And, of course, a story emerges that involves both of them. So we were surprised a couple weeks ago that Hi-Fi Rush was not on the list of Xbox games coming to Switch, because that was all the reporting saying that was going to be the case. And we got Pentiment and Grounded instead, and then PlayStation got Pentiment, Grounded, Hi-Fi Rush, and Sea of Thieves.
Right.
So a new report from Insider Gaming now says that Hi-Fi Rush will still arrive on Nintendo platforms, but you guessed it, it will be on Switch 2. So it's all rumors, reports, and speculation at this point, but do you think this will be the case?
That Hi-Fi Rush will be on the Switch follow-up console?
Yes.
Yeah, probably. Sure.
Seems logical. Does that mean that the Switch just isn't powerful enough for Hi-Fi Rush, which seems very strange? That seems like a weird game to be this powerhouse. The Switch can't possibly contain it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in that game, and also it's a game that you can't make a lot of concessions for, right? It looks the cell shaded nature of it makes it look like maybe fewer sort of textures and less to deal with there and stuff. But if you you can't drop that game down to 30 FPS. For example, right? It's a rhythm game ultimately. So it needs to be smooth. If it hitches at all, then it breaks kind of the whole rhythm of the game. And so I bet that's probably a factor.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that as well. Is it needs to maintain that consistent frame rate. It needs to be a pretty high frame rate as well. So yeah. I think that is probably the case. That was my deep meditations that I was having on this whole situation, because I just, ever since the words Switch 2 and Xbox multi-platform came across my screen, I have not stopped thinking about this Hi-Fi Rush coming to Switch rumor. So
right.
And then imagine my surprise when it didn't come to Switch. So does that mean, do you think that we will see Sea of Thieves for Switch 2 as well?
I would think so eventually, right? I mean, there's the goal for Sea of Thieves, I think, from Microsoft's perspective, me just sort of as an outsider making assumptions here, is that they just want to build that community as much as they can at this point, right? They can't really get any bigger on Xbox, so they're going over to PlayStation, and yeah, Switch just brings more people in. So yeah, I think that'll happen for sure.
And they're doing it the right way with cross-platform play for both that and Grounded. Those are the two multiplayer games of that group of 4.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also agree. I think that it will definitely come to Switch 2 or whatever it ends up being called. We're just going to say Switch 2 from now on, because it's
sure.
it's too burdensome.
It's the shorthand at this point. Yeah,
exactly. It's like Breath of the Wild 2 instead of the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild,
right?
As Nintendo deemed it originally.
Yeah.
But all right, well, speaking of the Switch being underpowered, I'm reading this over on NintendoLife.com. The Batman Arkham trilogy came out a few months ago. I think I was excited to have these games on the go, which, in the time since I've gotten a Steam Deck, which plays them much better. But the Arkham Knight port just ran like garbage. Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, they made some concessions, but they still ran pretty well, from what I understand.
Yeah, I played a little City on Switch, and found that it was fine.
Okay, well, I hope you didn't play Arkham Knight, because
I didn't even download it.
It ran like garbage at launch, according to everybody. And then earlier this week, that game in particular, out of this trilogy, received a 16 gigabyte patch, and everybody was like, "Oh, well, they must have done some performance enhancements or stabilization or something." And those who are hoping that apparently are going to be disappointed because, according to this Nintendo Life article, the visuals still look terrible, the
Oh,
frame rate
no.
still can't stay consistent, and it's still absolutely riddled with bugs.
Jeez. Okay.
So I guess if you're looking to play Arkham Knight in 2024, you should stay away from the Switch version still, which is unfortunate because like it sucks. Like I'd rather it be like a Sea of Thieves situation where they're just like, yeah, we can't get this to work the way we want it to work on this system, so we'll wait for Switch 2.
Yeah.
I would much rather have that. Like I'd rather them have say like we tried to make this work, we couldn't. It's not going to come out on this platform. Than give me the worst possible version of this game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I recently just downloaded it on my Steam Deck. I have no worries that it is going to run great on there, especially when I see things like God of War 2018 running great on it. So I think that Arkham Knight will run just fine on the Steam Deck, and hopefully there's like a next gen patch whenever the next Switch comes out and makes
If
these
Switch
games
2
run.
plays Switch 1 games, right? I
Well, if it
we're all,
doesn't,
we're all
this
kind of assuming it will, but we don't know for sure.
if it doesn't, you will have a very bitter episode of All Things Nintendo
Yeah.
when the Switch 2 details come out and they
Everyone would.
say
Yeah.
not backward compatible after the library that we have all built on this amazing current gen console. So
Yeah. But you could say that about, to be fair, you could say that about every platform ever. You know what I mean? And the sort of transition between 1 to 2 is not always guaranteed, right?
it's not, but I feel like it is the current standard.
Yeah, I to be clear, I hope desperately that that's the case. But I'm just saying, if it's not, I'm not gonna be like surprised. I'll just be disappointed.
Oh, I'll be outright angry.
Yeah.
Like it's such a slam dunk because I don't know. It would be
But I
such a
mean,
fumble.
did you feel that way about like PlayStation 3 to 4 and like?
No, but I would feel that way about PlayStation 5 to 6, and I would have felt that way about PlayStation 4 to 5 if it was
Yeah.
like none of these games were, just because I think Xbox has been the leader for this because they established the Universal Windows platform and they implemented that into the Xbox One midway through its life cycle. And when they announced that, I got to talk to Phil Spencer and I asked him about like, is backwards compatibility the main reason for this? And he said, I wouldn't say the main reason. The main reason I would say is forward compatibility. That's when you know, like kind of like how PCs have been for a long time now, where if you buy a game for Steam, you more than likely know it's going to work on almost all your future computers until, you know, whatever, like a major shift in the industry happens. And
Yeah.
like there's no compatibility. Like when DOS went away, a lot of DOS games stopped working. He was arguing that, like, you know, when you buy an Xbox console, you can have confidence because it's all built on this universal Windows platform that it will work with future Xbox consoles. And we've seen that with Xbox Series X. It played pretty much all of the Xbox One games. I think the only ones it didn't play were the ones that were requiring Kinect.
Mhm.
So when you have that, or like versions that have like newer gen versions available that just, you know, it doesn't make sense to have it, or like it was like a game that was delisted. I think some of those don't work. PlayStation 5 did the same thing, building off of PlayStation 4, but there were a few select games that didn't work. I think there were like a list of like 5 or 6 Ubisoft games that didn't work and
Okay.
stuff like that.
I
think
to be clear, I hope it is industry standard now. Like
I feel like it has to be. Like I think it would be a huge misstep for literally any company with any degree of success to put out a new console, or I mean, there's not really a handheld to carry forward unless you like PlayStation puts out a Vita 2 and it doesn't play Vita 1 games. I guess
Yeah.
that would be a fumble, but I think a lot of people have moved on from the Vita. Not a lot of people have moved on from the Switch yet, so I don't think you can count that as like an outdated console. So
no, agreed.
I hope it's an industry standard, and a lot of these Switch games that don't run particularly well, like Scarlet and Violet and Arkham Knight, we get kind of that new gen upgrade that makes them work, and then maybe they get some new life on that console, the next Switch console. But this is all speculation. We've talked enough about the Switch too. Remember when we got a new game from both Sonic and Mario in the same week?
Yeah.
And we
I
all
remember when
said,
that Mario game came out.
well, we all said going into that week, this is probably a bad idea for Sonic to keep this date. And it turns out in hindsight, Sega agrees. This is a translation and transcription from Nintendo Everything. Quote was during a recent earnings call. I don't have down who was speaking here, but somebody from Sega said, although Sonic Superstars has generally been well received by those who have played it, the timing of the launch coincided with competing titles in the same genre, and it has been short of the initial forecast. The strategic expansion of Sonic IP is progressing well, and we will continue to work to increase repeat sales of this title. All right, so last year was just ridiculous in general in terms of like game releases, but that week in particular, you may recall we got Mario Wonder, Sonic Superstars, and also Spider-Man 2.
Oh god,
that was just stupid.
Mirage was in there too, I think.
I think that was maybe the week before.
Okay, all right, so it's close to it. Yeah.
But still, that is a ridiculous stretch. That is a 7-day period, I believe, that we got all those games. And remember, we were originally supposed to get Alan Wake 2 that week as well. And they were like, we're going to delay until the end of November instead of the middle of November.
Yeah, because
they were straightforward. They were saying like, look, that week is really busy. This is not a development delay. This is us pushing because we know that it's just too crowded. There's too many people in the pool. We're not going to be able to stretch out our legs and really go as fast as we need to, or go as well as we need to. So
yeah,
smart move by Alan Wake 2, not such a smart move by Sonic Superstars.
It's interesting that they acknowledge that, right? Like usually I feel like they wouldn't share that kind of detail. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
They have to probably pin it on something, and they're trying not to pin it on the developers, because Sonic Superstars wasn't as good as Mario Wonder, but it wasn't a bad game, you know? Like
it was overshadowed, though. Shadow the Hedgehog.
Overshadowed the Hedgehog, yes. But I think this is actually the right thing to say, because
agreed. Yeah. I just feel like it's rare that you see people be forward like that in this industry.
I feel like we're starting to get to an era where like it's okay to acknowledge that another company exists.
Yeah, it's weird that it does feel like that for so long many pretended they couldn't talk about, other developers and publishers.
It is funny though, because I did that article when I wrote both the Sonic Superstars and the Super Mario Brothers Wonder cover stories, and I asked both of the developers, Takashi Iizuka and Takashi Tezuka, the Takashi 2, you might call them. I asked them about the fact that these two games, they have such an intertwined history for the past 30 plus years. What do they think about both of these games going back to 2D roots? Because it's the first 2D game for several years for both the franchises. And Takashi Iizuka from Sonic Team, like he was like, oh, I think it's great. These two franchises have such a great history. Mario is such an amazing series. Sonic is, have such a long storied history with Mario. I think it's great. Takashi Tezuka, I'm confusing them now, over at Nintendo, overseeing Mario development. I think he is still in the way of the Nintendo style of acknowledging other franchises, which was, we are making a 2D game. We hope that people are excited for a 2D game. And, there are other 2D games. We hope people are excited for the 2D style of gameplay, whether that is playing Super Mario Brothers Wonder or another title. Like, not acknowledging like that I've asked directly about Sonic Superstars. And I think that's very much a Nintendo thing, because I've asked about other franchises to several developers at Nintendo, and it's often like, oh, I don't have any insight into those other developers. Like I asked, like, what sets Mario's level design apart from other companies? Because, Mario has such a long storied history of amazing games. Like there's not any really bad Mario games. Like there are some Mario games that are better than others, but there's no like outright bad Mario games. That's often the level design is fantastic.
Right.
And I asked him like, what sets Mario's level design apart from like other companies? Why can't other companies replicate this? And the initial response is, I don't have any insight into other companies. And I'm like, all right, well, that's not quite what I wasn't asking you to like go into depth about why Sega isn't as good at designing levels as Nintendo.
Yeah.
I just want to get into like the special sauce of what Nintendo does, but he did give me an answer. It's somewhere on GameInformer.com. I wish I had it off the top of my head. But yeah, I have noticed that like developers, like it's always been kind of like, developers in Japan are a little bit more cagey about acknowledging other developers' works, like outside of their company. But I have noticed that it's shifting more, and they are embracing like people outside of like Kojima and Kamiya and like, those kind of auteurs, they are developers outside of that are starting to break out of that mold. Like when I did the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth cover story, Naoki Hamaguchi, the director, I had it in the rapid fire questions. What's your favorite RPG series outside of Final Fantasy? And I was expecting him to be like, oh, Dragon Quest, like, another Square
Mhm.
Enix thing, because I've gotten that answer way too many times where it's I ask them, what's your favorite thing outside of this? And they'll name another franchise that is owned by that company.
Yes, yeah, yeah, totally
So
I've been there.
my follow up was, well, what's your favorite RPG franchise outside of Square Enix? Because I was just ready for him to say like Dragon Quest or some Star Ocean, something in
Yeah,
Square
a
Enix.
Square Enix RPG. Yeah.
But he went The Witcher 3. And I was like, oh, okay. I can skip this one. Skip that follow-up. So it's good to see that like it's becoming more commonplace to like let the personalities shine and be a little bit more candid about acknowledging other companies. We're circling all the way back to that Sega quote, just saying that like, hey, there was another game that was very similar to ours and we were overshadowed maybe a bit. But yeah, so I'm
It's nice
glad
to
that
see. Yeah.
we are seeing that as more commonplace. Kyle, what are your thoughts on Mario Wonder and Sonic Superstars coming out that same week?
I think it was a bad call, honestly, for both of them. Like, I don't think it really benefited Mario necessarily to stomp all over Sonic, if I'm being honest, right? Like, it's not like they sold more because Sonic was also available. Like, they should have they should have tried to space them out a little bit. It would have benefited Sonic quite a bit, I think.
Though maybe there was a little bit of like, we're doing this throwback to the 90s with both these games having a 2D release. Maybe they were bringing back a little bit of a console wars mentality. Be like, oh, you think you can launch the same week as us? Watch us just run through you like Godzilla runs through Tokyo.
Yeah, I think it's also just so tough with physical releases. Like one of the reasons that Alan Wake and Remedy, I assume, again, I'm talking a little out of my butt here. I did spend a little time working for a publisher, but like once you have like a physical thing that is printed onto like a disc or a cartridge, like your date kind of becomes immovable, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because Alan Wake 2 didn't receive a physical release, sadly, they were a little bit more flexible on when they can move it around. And like I think the best thing would have been when Sega found out about the the Mario Wonder release date. They should have tried to move, but I don't think it was really that much of a possibility for them ultimately.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly I think it would have been more in line with the way Sega operates than the way Nintendo operates, because like Nintendo always seems to have kind of like those blinders up, even though they're checking out other stuff, but their public perception is like they will march to their own beat constantly. Like when Xbox and PlayStation are like, we have the highest resolution graphics and HDR, Nintendo's just like, this thing can max output 1080p, but you can take it on the go and look how successful that was.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for like, I feel like when Nintendo puts out a release date, they're going to win the game of chicken,
Yeah.
or they're going to crash into you head first as much as they did here. But they're also an 18-wheeler. Sonic Superstars was like an F-250 at best.
Sure. Yes. I don't really know what those words mean, but
a standard pickup truck versus an 18-wheeler is what I'm
okay.
saying. But like a larger size pickup truck, but okay. But still, it's not gonna stand a chance against an 18-wheeler is what I was saying if you're playing a game of chicken. All right, Kyle. We got a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game announced over the last week. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Arcade Wrath of the Mutants comes from your former employer, Game Mill Entertainment, Kyle.
Yeah, just speaking of, I worked at a publisher for a little while, yeah.
Yeah, so Raw Thrills, which was the studio behind Cruisin' Blast, they put out an arcade game in 2017, just like Cruisin' Blast. That was an arcade game as well. And much like Cruisin' Blast, it is coming to Switch, and they are adding additional content, just like they did with Cruisin' Blast. Cruisin' Blast, I remember they like exponentially raised the number of tracks and cars and everything, and it seems like they're adding a decent amount of content to Wrath of the Mutants as well. So it's an arcade style beat 'em up with 4-player co-op, and this version will receive 3 new stages and 6 new boss fights, and you can play as any of the turtles, obviously, but there's also like several other characters that you can play as in this game. So I'm looking forward to this. I like a good TMNT beat 'em up. Like I feel like they like, some of my favorite beat 'em ups of all time are Ninja Turtles games, like Turtles in Time and the 1989 arcade game. I am very much looking forward to checking this out, and it comes out April 23rd on Switch. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll put that on my calendar, and maybe I'll even write the review. So,
I mean, it's nice to see those arcade games. I mean, like I said, we've with the disclaimer that like I was working at Game Mill when Cruise and Blast came out, but it's like I do like seeing arcade games come to console. Like it's fun to see like, oh, what was this thing that I'm not really super familiar with this.
Yeah, because they aren't in like the arcade bars that like I go to. They're at like the Dave and Buster's of the world.
Right. Yeah.
So wait, speaking of arcade games, and this is not something associated with Game Mill, so you can have a little bit more of an opinion on this, Kyle. There's a Mario Kart arcade game. Do you think that ever comes over to Switch?
Man, I say no, primarily because the fact that it hasn't already is telling.
Yeah.
And I think from Nintendo's perspective, they probably don't want to dilute any of Mario Kart 8's sort of fabulous success, right? Because there are so many people who would buy this and be like, "Oh my God, it's a new Mario Kart," and like, it's just not going to be as good as Mario Kart 8. It's not. I'm sorry. It's not developed primarily by Nintendo. It was made for arcades. It's going to lack a lot of the charm that makes the arcade version fun, like having cameras that like take pictures of your face and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like what would happen is like a lot of people would buy it and be like, "Oh, this is the new Mario Kart? They've really fallen from grace. This is not as good as 8." And I think Nintendo's trying to avoid that. Even though that said, I would totally be happy to have it on my Switch, right? Like, I think that would be cool.
I think so too, but I do agree that would be kind of like what we're getting with like the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then these Sony movies that feature Marvel characters like Madam Web and Morbius. It's like, I think
Yes.
for the people who are in the know, they're like, oh, well, those aren't the real Marvel movies. The real Marvel movies are like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and Infinity War and all those movies. I mean, not that there haven't been some stinkers in there as well.
Yeah.
But the people who are in the know look over at the Sony Marvel movies and they go, oh, well, Morbius, that wasn't actually made by Marvel. But the people who are like not really following and they're just like, they see Marvel and they're like, oh, well, Morbius, that, man, Marvel's really fallen off. Like they don't want that with Mario Kart, especially since it's almost always the highest selling game. They have their own amazing style or amazing Mario Kart game. They don't need to bring over this other thing, even though it would be cool for the people who are in the know, just for nothing more than like, completing the Mario Kart library on your Switch or even for archival purposes.
Yeah. And like, it is I think your comparison is perfect, Morbius versus like the standard Marvel movie. Like, I do think that those Mario Kart arcade machines are better than Morbius, right? In that comparison, like they are fun. Like I know we're kind of crapping all over them, but like they're fun. It is fun to play Mario Kart in person on an arcade cabinet with all the bells and whistles. I don't want to come off too harsh on those arcade games. You if you see one, you should hop on and play a couple races.
I do like that. Like we could put that as a back of the box quote if they ever do bring the arcade. Better than Morbius. Kyle Hilliard.
Now I haven't seen Morbius, so I'm going on a little bit of a limb here.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had fun whenever I've sat down with those Mario Kart arcade games, but yeah, it does feel like almost like off-brand Mario Kart with the official Mario license.
Yeah, it's not quite Philips CDI, it's not Hotel Mario, but it's like there's like just a little sprinkling of that on there.
Yeah. All right, Kyle, let's talk Pokemon Day.
Let's do it.
We can run through these relatively quickly, I think, because, they ran through them relatively quickly.
Yeah.
But we started with Scarlet and Violet. Terra raid battles. If you're still going around the Paldea region fighting the Terra raid battles, starting this week, we'll have the starter evolutions from Gen 1. So Mighty Venusaur, Mighty Blastoise, and Mighty Charizard happening between now and March 17th. Each week will feature a different one of those Gen 1 starters. So you can go get those evolutions if you would like. Pokemon Go is getting a Captain Hat Pikachu to celebrate the new Pokemon Horizons anime. And he is in Pokemon Go from March 5th to March 11th. Do you still play Pokemon Go at all?
No, it's been a long time. I've never deleted it. And like once in a blue moon, my wife, if we go somewhere sort of unique, she'll be like, "Oh, what's going on with Pokemon Go over here?" But I'm talking like once every 4 or 5 months. You know, but for me, it's probably been a couple of years. Even though I really still have a lot of affection for Pokemon Go and think it's cool.
I do too, and it sucks. The thing that always deters me is I open up the app and I'm like, okay, well, I know I need to spin these Pokestops, and every time I go to spin, it's like your bag is full, and then I look in my bag and it's like I don't know what I can get rid of because I haven't played this game in so long. Like, are these like even still relevant? Like, I end up just deleting like 200 Pokeballs and then I can spin.
Yep.
And then it's immediately full again after spinning like 3 Pokestops. And I'm like, well, I guess that's all the fun I'm having with this game. And then it's like I also have like, I think my Pokemon box is like 2 away from being full. So it's like I can't even click into Wild Encounters. And it's
you don't know what you like is worth going after because you haven't played it in such a long time.
Yeah,
you don't have that memory. Yeah.
So yeah, I every time I open it up, I feel like there needs to be like a complimentary upgrade for everyone to like get them back in. Like, okay, well now everybody has 200 more slots on both their Pokemon boxes and their backpack. You know?
Like, yeah, that's like I wasn't considering this, but it's like, man, what would get me back into Pokemon Go? And honestly, this is wild, but I think it would be like if there was some mode or side thing that let you start from zero.
Oh, interesting.
You keep all your progress that you've made, but they're like, and this is the red and blue mode, and you start over. Like, I think something like that would maybe make me check it out again. But that's the conversation we were prepared to have. But it is something that clicked in my brain. I was like, what even would make me start playing Pokemon Go again? I don't know.
Yeah, it's I always want to play it, but then I just run into those roadblocks and never ends up working out. So I like you, I've never deleted. I think maybe it's archived on my phone now because I have that thing enabled on iPhone where it's like as storage gets full, it like offloads apps I haven't used in like 3 months or something. So it's probably in that situation, but
actually look and see. I mean, you don't have to wait for me, but I'm curious. Is like, has it been archived?
No, we'll wait in silence while we figure this out.
Right. Yeah, everyone. I'm just swiping through apps. I don't even know what folder it's in.
Well, on your apps list, do you have Pokemon Sleep by chance?
No, I never mess with that.
I have not either, but
all right. Pokemon Go absolutely has been archived, which is telling. So
okay, so Captain Hat Pikachu is in that game from March 5th to the 11th to celebrate the
hold on.
anime.
Did you say Captain Hat?
Captain Hat. He has a Captain.
Hold on. I gotta re-download Pokemon Go. Hold on. This is important.
That's what will finally get you in. It's not red blue mode. It's Captain Hat Pikachu. But anyway, Raikou. You know Raikou from the Gen 2 games, Gold and Silver? One of the legendary tiger guys, electric.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I think people call them the legendary dogs, but I think they're definitely cats, right?
I mean, it just says what kind. It just says what kind of person you are, whether you think it's dogs or cats.
I mean, Raikou is almost certainly a saber-toothed tiger. That's what I'm saying.
All right, then it's a cat.
But anyway, not the cuddliest of Pokemon, but they're adding Raikou to Pokemon Sleep this month. I don't know what that means.
Hold on, I gotta download Pokemon.
I have not checked out Pokemon Sleep at all, but from what I've seen, it's like they have like Bulbasaur and Pikachu and Snorlax and like, you know, Pokemon that you could see yourself not being murdered in your sleep by, unless, you know, Snorlax maybe rolls over on you. But Raikou, it looks like a dangerous Pokemon. Like, Raikou is like one notch below Gyarados in terms of like the cuddly factor.
Right.
Like, I don't know, I guess maybe because maybe it'll be like a cute kitten version of Raikou or whatever. But yeah, that is one of the announcements they made. One more, actually 3 more mobile game announcements. Pokemon Masters EX. This was always the one that I thought I should get into, but every time I do, I just bounce off of it because it's like battle focused, you know?
Right.
it's getting new characters and new Pokemon. Gita and her Glamora. So I know she is from Scarlet and Violet. Silver and his Tyranitar. So that's obviously from Gold and Silver. And Signa Suit Gladion and Magerna. Those are the 3 pairings that are coming over to Pokemon Masters EX. And there's also a photo creator mode or feature that they are adding to that.
Okay.
So I don't know. I really think that I would like it, but I don't know. There's just not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
Pokemon Cafe Remix, adding new challenges, as well as Koraidon and Miraidon from Scarlet and Violet. And then Pokemon Unite is adding new Pokemon from Scarlet and Violet. So Miraidon is coming to that as well, available now. Phalanx is coming in April, and then Ceruledge is coming at some point in the future. So do any of those mobile game announcements mean anything to you?
I mean, not really. I haven't, the mobile side outside of Pokemon Go, which I mean, Brian, for you and me and the rest of the world, was like just an obsession when it came out, right? It was like that was our lives for a period of time. I mean, other than that, no mobile Pokemon game has really pulled me in any real way.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of been my case as well. Cafe Remix, I don't know. Like, all these games, I feel like I would enjoy them. I don't know what Pokemon Sleep really even is, but I feel like
Well, that's more of like a lifestyle
yeah.
sort of app. It's not really like the teeth brushing one, which I actually, that was one that I did download and like try just because I was like so fascinated by it. Those two are kind of like lifestyle more than games per se, I think. But yeah, none of the games. So, and it's not even that I look at them and think they're like bad, right? It's not like, oh, those suck, I don't want to play those. It's just like they just sort of look just not particularly exciting. Right, well done for what they are and their goals, but just nothing that really stands out to me and pulls me in.
We just need to have a red blue mode added to the Pokemon. Was it Pokemon Smile? Is that what it's
Yes,
called?
red. I don't know what that is exactly.
That just means you have no teeth and you slowly grow teeth, and then they fall out, and then you grow adult teeth.
I believe they're called smile bones.
Oh yeah,
Right.
that's what they call them.
Yeah.
Just don't eat any rare candy because then you get cavities.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so we ended on the 2 best announcements by far. I will say at this point in the stream, hype levels were all-time low for the Pokemon franchise.
ATL.
So we ended with Pokemon trading card game Pocket for mobile devices. Now, basically what this is it is a phone app, and you get a new pack of cards each day to build your collection, and then you can battle and trade with your friends. There's also this cool, like, immersive card feature where you can expand out the card art and, like, basically make the card art full screen and see, like, stuff that you can't see, like, on a standard card. So that's coming sometime in 2024. I don't know what that means for Pokemon TCG Live. I'm assuming they're going to exist in parallel because they just launched that thing, which is like the new version of the trading card game app that existed before, where you could import your real life cards if you went through this tedious process of scanning the QR codes that take forever to be recognized by your camera, and or typing in like a 12-digit key for every single pack that you buy. So I never did it, but I guess I've played a little bit with that one. I wonder if this has a better way of doing that, because it would be great to be able to use
Just
all these
simplify
QR
it.
codes that I've had over the years. But does this seem interesting to you at all?
No.
Okay.
Sorry to be blunt. The card game is I never engaged with the card game really, collecting or otherwise. It's just my sort of fandom of Pokemon is almost explicitly Pokemon Go and the mainline games, and that's about it.
Yeah, I'm much more of a physical card kind of guy. I've moved.
Yeah, you and Alex Van Aken both, like, you guys love collecting the cards.
Yeah, I've moved a lot of my stuff, a lot of my entertainment to digital at this point. Almost all the games that I pick up are digital. All the music I listen to is on Apple Music. Movies are almost exclusively digital at this point. But I like having like physical books, even though I do still use like Kindle, physical comics, and physical cards and magazines, obviously.
Mm.
I think I'll have fun with this, but I don't know if I'm going to get obsessed with it. Like I could see myself downloading this and just getting my free pack every day. unless there's something that I'm not fully understanding, it'll be one of those things like, oh, that's cool to have in my phone. Like I can show off like my card collection. It would be really nice if I could scan all these stupid QR codes that I've gotten from all the Pokemon packs that I've gotten and make it so it's quick and easy to import those cards into this app. So that way I have my collection on the go. And that way I can just be like, oh, look at this awesome Charizard variant that I have. And I don't know, that seems like the coolest utility. And then being able to trade digital cards, I don't know, like this feels like one step away from like NFTs.
Yeah, that's yeah, yes, which I'm like, I'm good. I also just like what any game period, once it becomes an obligation, a daily obligation, I'm out. Like I don't want that.
Yeah, I could see that too. I mean, I have a couple of those daily obligation games. Like I still play Marvel Snap almost every day, and Marvel Strike Force I still play every day. But like anything else that's like you need to log into this every single day and get your stuff, it's like if it's not Duolingo, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, if it's not bettering your sort of
Yeah,
you as a person. Yeah. What are you
exactly.
learning in? What language are you learning?
I'm learning Spanish,
Oh,
but
nice.
also I was looking at some other courses, like maybe some Japanese or some Arabic. But yeah, Spanish is the one that I'm on a 700-day streak now.
Congratulations.
Why, thank you. All right, Kyle, let's move to the one that I think most people would say is the only announcement they cared about from this Pokemon Day stream. That is Pokemon Legends ZA or Z-A or ZA. We don't know.
It's a
So
pizza reference.
I'm gonna say ZA, but it might even be Zeta Alpha for all we know. But I'm assuming it's Z something. It's either Z Alpha or Z A or ZA.
Yeah.
Because it's playing off of Pokemon X and Y. Because remember, everybody was like, oh, well, the obvious one is going to be Pokemon Z is the ultimate version of this, and we never got that. So the fact that this is called Pokemon Legends ZA, this is what we're going to go with. It is the second game in the Legends series, and it is taking place in Lumio City from the X and Y games. And from one of the descriptions I saw, it is entirely in Lumio City. So I don't know how that's going to work, because the thing about Pokemon Legends Arceus was you can just go out into these giant areas. I mean, I know Lumio City is one of the bigger cities in the Pokemon franchise. That still seems rather small for what is a big open world game, or I guess segmented open world game, at least in Legends Arceus.
Yeah. Also, it's modern, which is weird considering what Legends was sort of about, right?
Yeah.
Like you were in an early era of Pokemon discovery. I mean, they definitely planted a lot of seeds that you're like, what does that mean for this series? Which is cool.
Yeah, it was like a city planning document that they had in the teaser trailer.
And no gameplay or anything.
No gameplay.
Right?
It was just like Pikachu running through Lumio City, and then
they say this year?
No, 2025 is when this comes out.
Okay.
And it does seem like Mega Evolutions, which, debuted in the X and Y games, are coming back, because at the end of the trailer, I don't know if you stuck around to the very end, it said like Pokemon Legends ZA coming 2025, and then it faded, and then there was like a brief black screen, and then the symbol for Mega Evolutions appeared at the very end of the trailer. It's like that kind of like neon colored leaf that's like a little like wavy. So that appeared at the very end of the trailer. There was also a couple of scenes that looked like they could be entering a Mega Evolution phase. I think it was Sylveon that like looked like it was about to do something, and Pikachu ran too fast, so we didn't get to see it actually do anything. I thought that was like maybe a teaser. Maybe it was a different move that I'm not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But it's coming sometime in 2025, and it does specify that it's coming to Switch. So I don't get to tinfoil hat this one as a Switch 2 launch title like I did with Princess Peach Showtime. But it does say Nintendo Switch Systems with an S, but that could just mean Switch, Switch Lite, and Switch OLED.
Yeah, I think that's on most Switch game trailers today,
Yeah.
But yeah, I could be wrong about that.
But that was it. Like, I don't know. I'm pretty underwhelmed, but how would you grade this Pokemon Day?
Oh, quite low. I mean, I don't know. I don't ever. It's not an F, but I mean, Legends is cool. Like that could have been it, right? And my grade would have been the same. You know what? My grade might have been higher, because I Legends was like such a cool game that like really took Pokemon in a fun new direction that a lot of people really appreciated. but it was like not a guaranteed like, oh, what's the next Legends going to be? And this is like I said, they didn't show any gameplay or anything, which is a little disappointing, but it's like, what does this mean? What does it take place in the present? Are there going to be 2 versions because there was only one version of Legends, stuff like that. So that's cool. I'm interested to see what that is. But everything else, yeah, it's pretty ho-hum. Nothing much standing out to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that maybe next Pokemon Day is when we hear about the next generation of Pokemon games. It probably is.
I mean, they should just give Scarlet and Violet another go. Like, just fix those.
I feel like that. I mean, that would be a smart launch title for Switch 2. Is like,
yeah, they could call it Scarlet and Violet, but functional. Like that could just be the title. Because my initial thought was like, but good. It's like, well, I actually do like Scarlet and Violet. It's just the technical hangups that really hold it back.
They should just put it on Steam Deck.
Yeah, just put on Steam Deck, you guys.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, just knock Pow World down a peg. We're on Steam Deck.
It would be like the Mario going up against Sonic Superstars thing all over again. Like, oh, you think you could exist in the same space as us? So yeah, it felt super underwhelming to me, and I'm gonna go with a C minus because I do enjoy Pokemon trading card game Pocket. I think that's something that's neat. I'm always a sucker for anything involving the Gen 1 starters, so even though I don't see myself logging on to the Terra Raid battles to fight Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard, I mean, I like that they are there. So I'll give it a C minus. I was bordering between C minus or D plus, but that's what I am thinking for that.
Okay.
But anything else stick out outside of Pokemon Legends ZA, or is that just about it?
No, that was it. I mean, that was the most exciting thing.
I think I'm right there with you. We're going to take one final break, and when we get back, I want to get into some of my early thoughts of Penny's Big Breakaway. We'll be back in just a moment. If you've listened to this show, you're probably well aware that I'm a big fan of Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic 3 & Knuckles may be my favorite Sonic game, but I might be able to acknowledge that Sonic Mania is the best Sonic game. So we're going to talk about the next game from the Sonic Mania developers, now known as Evening Star. The game is called Penny's Big Breakaway. Kyle, you have had a chance to see a little bit of this game. What were your initial impressions?
Yeah, I mean, a couple months ago now, Wes wrote this big feature on the game where he spoke with Evening Star, and we got access to a preview build of the game, and he played it, and then I also played that preview build to do a little coverage. So I played like the first couple levels, and I was charmed by it. I thought it seemed cool, it seemed interesting, it played well, and yeah, I mean, it was a positive first impression.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does make a positive first impression. There are things about this game that I absolutely love. So I've been playing it. I'm working towards getting a review up on GameInformer.com, but there's a lot of stuff going on right now, so I've not quite finished up my time. I am 7 worlds deep. The game's menu would have me believe there are 11 worlds and then a bonus world. So I am through a good portion of the game, but I'm not ready to deliver a finalized review. So I'm still saying these are early impressions.
Sure.
First up, unsurprisingly, Christian Whitehead, who is the head of this studio, he did a lot of the level design for Sonic Mania. He understands how to make a really amazing level. And I'm assuming it's not just him making these levels. So it's his team understands how to make a really amazing platforming level. And there has not been a single time in my playthrough so far where I've not thought this level is extremely well designed. It's really fun. There's a lot of really cool stuff that they allow you to do, and it always tries to play to the strengths of the movement.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the other major positive that I will say that I have for Penny's Big Breakaway, is when you are moving and chaining together your moves and traversing these levels, it can feel phenomenal. Like there's sometimes where it's like, all right, well, I'm going to jump. I'm going to use the yo-yo to swing from one spot to the next platform. I'm going to land there in a roll. And so the character, it's a 3D platformer for those aren't familiar. And it is you're this character who has a yo-yo. Her name's Penny. and she uses that yo-yo for all different moves. You can either use the face buttons or the right analog stick, and you can swing the yo-yo out in different directions to attack. You can double tap it and she'll dash forward. You can hold it when you're in midair and she'll kind of do like a swing. Like the yo-yo will kind of act as like a rope, like in Donkey Kong Country, where you can swing across and like use the momentum to carry forward.
Right.
And then you can also do this roll move where she jumps on the yo-yo and kind of rolls forward like a wheel. When you're chaining those together, it feels so good. Like rolling through these stages, especially how well designed the stages are, it feels unbelievable. Those are my favorite moments in the game. But it's kind of contrasted against some pretty glaring problems.
Oh, yeah.
And my biggest thing, and this is one that like it's going to sound like a tiny thing, but it invades the rest of the experience and it floods it, and it poisons. It's just a drop of poison in an otherwise like the well,
Right.
like it's like, oh man, I wish this didn't just infect the entire experience. Depth perception is a real problem at times.
Okay.
But what I mean by
now,
that,
are you playing with one eye closed? I know you do that sometimes.
I do not. I am not playing with one eye closed. I am playing on the Switch though, so maybe that is part of it. I do have it on Steam as well, so I'm going to check out that version to make sure it's not like just the Switch version that sucks in this regard and in some of these other regards. But depth perception, where I am jumping from one platform to the next, and in my mind I will say I am perfectly lined up to land on this platform, and then in the game Penny will just fall to her death.
Okay.
And that is a problem that like a lot of 3D platformers have, quite frankly, where it's like you don't quite have it lined up. It just doesn't click in your brain like this is where I'm going to land, and then you land perfectly, right? Like Mario 64 did a great job with that. I think it's also to do with the camera. The camera also has some problems, particularly when like you're trying to go a different direction than like the main path. Like there are some areas where you can go explore, and once you get down that path, the camera will shift a little bit. But there are times where it just doesn't do it well enough, and it's like I can't see where I'm going, or like I'll miss a collectible and I'll have to go backtrack, and it's like kind of like I don't know. It's always pointing in the one direction. You don't have a lot of camera control. Like you can nudge it a little bit, but you don't have a lot of camera control.
Yeah, because you're using the right stick to do like yo-yo attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's the D-pad that you use to kind of nudge it a little bit, but it's not sufficient. That another thing kind of similar along those lines, the screen can just be so crowded that it makes it difficult to like see where you're jumping. Like there was one point, because there's like the standard like UI stuff, which is fine. Like in the lower corners, there's different things telling you like your health and your score and stuff like that. But then like if you accept a side quest, there are little like characters that are in there, and there's like, oh well, I need you to collect the 5 pieces of fruit that I dropped in this one area, and you have like a timer that you need to collect those fruits through, and then if you do that, you get like one of the game's in-game collectibles. So that's fine. But what that does is it spawns basically like the upper third of the screen is covered up with this big blue box that tells you how many side quests that you've completed and how many collectibles you've found in the level and which one this is. You're trying to do number 2 of 3 of the side quests in this level, and it's blocking like maybe it's a quarter of the screen, maybe it's not quite as big as a third of the screen. But then there's other stuff going on the screen. Like there's one of the key mechanics is that like, you're trying to be caught by these other characters that are chasing you, and they send these groups of penguins your way. And the penguins, literally, it's just like a giant group, and they flood, and you have to keep performing moves in order to make sure that they're like not grabbing you. Because if enough of them latch onto you, they capture you, and it's basically like you lose a hit point. You have to start over at the checkpoint. So in order to deal with all that, like, or in order to accommodate that, you have there was a point where I had the side quest thing on the top of the screen, all these penguins flying at me, and I'm just trying to platform. It's like, I can't see where I'm going. There's just too many things happening on this screen right now.
Right. Yeah. No, that what you're saying all makes sense.
And it's really frustrating.
In terms of it being
at times.
frustrating. Yeah.
And as much as I love the movement, moves being mapped to the same button just has not worked for me in a lot of ways. And there have been so many times, because attack, dash, like if you double tap attack, you'll dash and swing, like the swinging movement when you're in the midair, all mapped to the same button. And that has screwed me over so many times where I'll be trying to attack an enemy and I'll just because, muscle memory, when you're hitting the attack button in an action game, sometimes you just mash it a couple of times. And when I do that, like I'll throw the yo-yo out as an attack and then I'll throw it out again. And instead of doing a second attack, that'll just send me flying off a cliff. And that has been a problem. Not as bad as some of these other problems, but that is something that I'm just like, wow, that I wish I could remap one of these moves to like a different button.
Right. Okay.
And then the other things, some of the boss fights, they are uneven. Like the first 2 boss battles that I had, it took me like the first one maybe took me like 5 or 6 tries, but I understood what I needed to do, right?
Yeah.
The second one, it took me like maybe 10 tries. And then I got to the third one. I'm like, oh, what's this going to be? How's this going to work? And am I going to get screwed over on this one? And I beat it on the first try. And I was like, oh, that was it? Okay. So
Okay.
it's not like a major complaint, but it's like maybe they could have rearranged those bosses a little bit because, I don't know, it just didn't feel like an escalation like you typically want with like a game and moving forward in like progress. And then my last thing is, maybe this is specific to the Switch version, maybe it's pervasive in the other versions as well, but I've experienced quite a few bugs.
Oh, really?
So
Okay.
falling
That's
through
fun.
walls, there's been times where I've been trying to like roll around and like I'll do like the swing and like I'll swing into a wall because I miscalculate. Oh, well, I needed more space to get enough arc on this swing to get up on top of the wall. And I'll fall just short, and next thing I know, I'm inside the wall, and I need to like hit restart from checkpoint or something, or I'll just move around until I fall through the map entirely and die. Also, there was one that I was playing last night, and it's like this race level that's like I think maybe it's counting as the 4th boss battle, where it's like a race against another character through a level. And
Okay.
let me tell you, when you're moving through these levels and trying to be fast about it, it really straddles that line of, wow, this feels really good, and wow, this is really frustrating, especially when the depth perception is so bad. But I fell off, right? And like when you fall off the map or fall off like a platform, unless like I think it's 5 hit points that you have. And as long as you have hit points, it'll just respawn you at like a recent platform. This time it respawned me directly in the middle of nowhere. So I just kept falling until I had 0 hit points. Like I fell. All right, respawn me right back at the same spot, fall. And it's like, wow, that was definitely not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Just respawning over an endless pit. That's not great. So that was when I was just like, all right, I think I'm done playing Penny's Big Breakaway for the night. I'm going to go to bed.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, overall, like I know I was very negative there, but I don't want those complaints to overshadow the fact that the level design and the movement can feel super good. But unfortunately, like those things like the depth perception and the bugs and the crowded screens do sometimes overshadow those very, very positive parts of this. So I'm kind of at odds with my overall thoughts on Penny's Big Breakaway.
Yeah.
But, I hope to have a review up in the next several days. But for now, I just wanted to deliver my thoughts. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to play Balatro. Alex Van Aken gave it as his eShop gem of the week and immediately sold me on it. So that is on my list. I also played a little bit of Comp 2, which is the Atari published, what they're kind of promoting it as a successor to Pong, where it's like it takes like you're controlling the ball through like these almost like Metroidvania style platforming areas. It's like a puzzle platformer without any platforming. It's very strange, but basically
Interesting.
you're controlling the ball from Pong as you navigate these mazes, and you have to avoid obstacles. And you press the button and it changes the direction of the ball. So you have to like avoid obstacles and like make your way through these courses that way. And that's been very fun so far. It's simple but very fun.
What's that one called again?
Comp 2. There was a game called Comp. It's QOMP.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, yeah.
Maybe
Right.
it's Quamp. I don't know, but usually the QU is necessitated for the qua sound.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about that one. Yeah.
But I had fun with it. What I've played so far, I do want to finish that one as well. But I'm sad that I haven't checked out Splatoon 3 Side Order because I'm wanting more Splatoon 3 single player content. I've been traveling this week, and I've also been immersed in Penny's Big Breakaway. So haven't had a chance to check that out yet. If I do, I will talk about it in the coming weeks. But Kyle, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you so much to everyone for listening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, throw All Things Nintendo a 5-star review and hit that subscribe button. If you want to get any questions or comments in, you can get in touch with me at allthingsnintendo@GameInformer.com or hit me up on social media at Brian P. Shea. You can also join the Game Informer community Discord, which is a perk for subscribing to our Twitch channel, even just for 1 month. Kyle, talk about your online presence.
Oh, yeah, I'm all over the place. Just Google me. You'll find me.
All right, that is our show for this week. Thank you all again so much for listening. Take care. We will see you next time.